Hello and grand rising, you beautiful souls. Welcome to a whopper, rather, of a super moon week. It's going to be a big one. I already need lemon and hot water because my throat is already going and we're only at the start of the show. Welcome to the show that knows those who proclaim the loudest that they are patriots often turn out to be the very ones who are traitors. And you will see exactly what I mean as this show unfolds. Yes, that might be a bit deep for Monday morning, but of course not for wake up viewers. How are you all? I hope you are all okay. Hi, everyone. None mentioned, none forgot. No idea what that's about. Good morning to you all. Hello, Drumstick and Cheryl and Colin and Randy and Jean and Paula and B and well, you name it. Merv and Robert and Sally Ann and Lorraine and Stephanie and SMG and Kath and Dilip and MB and Isa Stars and on, and Mel's and Cavan and Dell. Hello to you all. I hope you are well. Have you caught whatever it is that's flying around? Oh, you might not believe in viruses. How are you all? I hope you are well. It's Monday, the 6th of October. It's just gone 9 a.m. British summertime. And what is on today's show? Well, we will be joined by geopolitical journalist, one of our favourites around here, Warren Thornton. He'll be talking to us about paid influencers, about the Middle East peace deal, about UK cracking down on protests, about Gaza construction, about Larry Ellison, about TikTok, you name it. Warren is here to talk about it. We'll also be joined by former Big Brother contestant Nathan King. He'll be talking about the backlash that has hit him ever since he came out about transgenderism. He's not transgender, I should point out. And what else will we be talking about? Oh, yeah, the UK cannot support first cousin marriages, says me. And a whole host of other intelligent, sensible people, but not the National Health Service, right? Also, Sean Diddy Combs sentenced last week. Was it appropriate? We'll be talking about that. Plus the really sad death of Marcus Fakana, the Dubai detained teen who we have talked about before, was sadly killed last week. And we'll be looking at Brenda Leyland, the anniversary of her sad death. Plus multiple requests asking me to look at the Jay Slater Channel 4 documentary. So I reviewed it just for you. Yes, I did, kids. Plus digital heaven, digital idea scamming heaven. It's going to be one of those days. My voice is already going. My throat is sore and I can't even read basic notes that I've written. How are you all? I hope you are well. Hope your weekend was well. Can you hear me all well in the comments? Morning, Glennis. Grand rising, Emily. Morning, Marcus. And hello, Marlena. How are you all? Hello, Gina. My colleague married her cousin. Her parents are also cousins. Marvelous. All good, Marcus. And good. Great to hear it. Thank you, people. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get cracking then. First of all, I just want to pay tribute to this poor lad. Poor sod, Marcus Fakana. We actually talked before about him with the woman who was representing him. So what happened? 19-year-old London lad, Marcus Fakana, spent 7 months in a Dubai prison over a holiday relationship with another British tourist before he was granted a royal pardon, was sadly killed in a car crash in the early hours of Friday morning. He was a passenger, smashed into another vehicle while it was being tailed by the Metropolitan Police in Tottenham, North London. A man has been charged. Marwan Mohammed Hassin has been charged with causing death by dangerous driving without insurance, driving without a license and failing to stop. And Hussein has already appeared at Highbury Magistrates Court, I believe, and I'm waiting to find some court notes on that. Marcus's family are, as you can imagine, absolutely devastated, just horrendous stuff. Marcus was imprisoned in Dubai after the mother of the girl he was in a relationship with discovered messages between the pair. There was a month in age difference between them. Marcus thought they were both 18. The girl was actually 17 years and 11 months. And in Dubai, you have to be 18 to have any kind of sexual relationship. And the mother waited until they got back to the UK and then reported Marcus to Dubai authorities. And because she reported in the UK and not in Dubai, her daughter was absolutely fine, but Marcus was imprisoned. Outrageous stuff. It was completely wrong. Terrible stuff. I talked with Rada Sterling from Detained in Dubai about it. And sadly, he was released on July the 3rd and dead by October the 3rd. Absolutely horrendous stuff. Poor lad. And Rada Sterling said it obviously very heartbreaking for everybody involved. She said Marcus spent the majority of this year in a Dubai prison, which no doubt caused him long-lasting mental anguish. It's sad that of all of 2025, he was only free for the 3 months from the 3rd of July until the 3rd of October. It wasn't necessary for him to be in prison at all. He could have been deported. Instead, David Lammy and the Foreign Office caused Marcus and his family no end of grief, refusing to effectively help him as the foreign minister. It's sad that he had to go through this in what would be the last months of his life. And I think that is terribly sad. And David Lammy was just horrendous. David Lammy is actually Marcus's MP in Tottenham, but David Lammy at the time was also the Foreign Office Minister, and he had told the family, I can either be your MP or the Foreign Office Minister. And they said, well, of course we want you to be the Foreign Office Minister in this role. And he chose to be the MP, and the MP has far less power than a Foreign Office Minister. So David Lammy had no plans in helping poor Marcus, and eventually it was led to the ruler of Dubai to pardon him. And no, McBoatface, no surprises there at all. David Lammy is awful, Stephen. Yes, indeed he is. But poor Marcus, the poor family, 19 years old. It's no age at all. Horrendous stuff. Right, let me have a look at this fella, whose court images absolutely represent and resemble the Scream, the very famous portrait. So back in July, Sean Diddy Combs was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering charges, but found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution involving his two ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and the individual known just as Jane. On Friday, Judge Aaron Subramanian told Combs that his crimes and the abuse of his ex-girlfriends warranted 50 months in prison and a $500,000 fine. Judge described how Combs used his fame and power to subjugate his victims. While he was being sentenced, Sean Combs did not look up. He remained expressionless for the judge's 20-minute speech. Afterwards, Combs turned around, looked at the entourage of his family and friends. There were about 30 in the courtroom, and he appeared to mouth the message, I love you, I'm sorry. He had written a lengthy appeal to the judge in the hope of avoiding jail time, but it was not to be. In that appeal, Sean had written, the old me died in jail and a new version of me was reborn. That kind of wording always scares me, especially when it comes to jail, because oftentimes they've either converted to one religion or another, or it's men who suddenly believe that they are women. So that kind of language always concerns me. This was a terrible prosecution, and I said it all the way through. For all the claims that were being made about Sean Diddy Combs, they failed to show any of this, really. What you ended up with was a deeply unsympathetic trial where the two women at the heart of it were seen as trading their morals for fame and their association with him. The whole scenario that we were told about, that many people claimed to know about, was played down, and it came down to him essentially having his girlfriends involved in these things that they called freak-offs, which seems really mild compared to all the things that he was being accused of. And as I say, it was a terrible prosecution. It was actually appalling. They neither had the evidence or the witnesses. And sadly, Cassie, even though we'd seen her being dragged and beaten by him through a hotel corridor, she came across as an unsympathetic witness, because the problem is the public are losing patience with people who are so desperate to be famed that they put up with a lot of awful, awful stuff from people. And then when it all falls on its arse, they then seek revenge or they seek prosecution, and people are sick of it. This is the reality. People are sick of it. So I'm not convinced that that sentencing was appropriate for what he was ultimately convicted of. He was more convicted in the court of public opinion. There were people making outrageous videos about him without any backup whatsoever. So, but I'm not saying that any of this was right or wrong. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He was always the height of professionalism and actually very gentlemanly with me, oddly. So I never saw that other side to him, but then why would I? I was a journalist. There's no way he was going to show that to me unless I was in on it, and I wasn't. So there you go. That's the outcome of it. And but if you just recall back, kind of like roundabout to this time last year, the onslaught that was coming out about him, and it's resulted in this, is just kind of ridiculous, right? And of course, we know that Diddy has associations with very high profile, high powered people, from, you know, Trump to, well, you name it, actors, lawmen, politicians. And to me, there was always a great similarity in what was going on with Diddy to what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. You know, it is my opinion, trafficking did take place, but they weren't able to prove it. It's stinky. It's stinky, says London Lady. Oh, Rumble not working. June, is that true? I have had some issues with Rumble. I hope it is streaming now. It's telling me it's streaming. I've got a tick here. Diddy is the fall guy, says Vicky. There might be some truth in that, Vicky. I have another slug of drink. Before I bring in my first guest, I just want to refer to this lady. This lady is Brenda Leyland. On Saturday, it was the 11th anniversary since the media motivated death of Brenda Leyland from Leicestershire. She was found dead at a Leicester hotel after she was confronted by Martin Brunt from Sky News. Mr. Brunt told the inquest in Leicester he had been devastated by her death. Coroner Catherine Mason, and I was there to witness it, concluded that Brenda had killed herself, and the coroner also called for sales of helium to be regulated. I'm not going to go into any great detail about Brenda. I've covered it thoroughly in one of my McCann docs about the media representation of the McCanns and how they use part of Madeleine's fund, funded by the public, for their media relations and their reputation. But the death of Brenda always really kind of impacts me. It seems incredibly wrong. She was doorstepped outside her home in Leicester by Martin Brunt and a cameraman. This is after Sky News had obtained what they called a dossier handed about Twitter trolls. Brenda was not a Twitter troll. And in fact, what I discovered in my documentary was she was a target of an online troll campaign on behalf of the McCanns. Now, I'm not saying the McCanns were funding that. I'm saying it was on behalf of the McCanns. It was a group of people who had been involved in compiling this dossier, which included Brenda and which also included me, and was given to the Metropolitan Police. And in fact, the commissioner at the time said that the dossier was given to them by the McCann family, even though that was denied. But poor Brenda, Sky News argued and said at the inquest that this report was in the public interest. That was absolutely a lie. As I point out in my documentary, it was not in the public interest. It was in the interest of one family only, and that was the McCann family. None of the messages sent by Brenda Leyland, who was just asking questions about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, but none of those questions were directed personally at the McCanns, who have, we were told, no significant presence on social media. Rest in peace, Brenda Leyland. And you may notice, I see that jury selection has started in the trial of Julia Wandelt and Karen Sprague, and she being the Polish national who claimed to be Madeleine McCann and charged with stalking Kate and Jerry McCann. And I will be saying almost nothing about it. Almost nothing about it until the trial is over. And then I will have plenty to say. It will be a wake-up show in its own right, because who you're staring at, was already warned off before the trial even started. That will be a full show when I can go in. Oh, yes, indeed, people. Oh, yes, indeed, Rua. Yes, indeed. Good day, Aaron. How are you, my darling? Good, then. It's going to be a powerful, powerful show about the actions towards me regarding this issue. Yes, indeed. Right. Let's bring in our first guest. Let's bring in our first guest. There's loads to talk about with him, and I'm sure we are about to. So let's get cracking. Here he is, Warren Thornton, geopolitical journalist. How are you, Warren?
I am absolutely fine, Sonia. I hope you and all your audience had a fantastic weekend.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Got something going on in my throat, but that's fine. Absolutely fine. I've got loads of mugs next to me of lemon water. So where to start, really? I mean, I think first of all, to kind of edge ourselves into this, because before you came on, I was going to talk about the Manchester attack and the impact, because a lot of the stuff that's going on as a consequence of what we're going to talk about, the clampdown on protests, etc., has come following that. So the Manchester attack, very briefly, was last week, and very difficult to know what's what at this stage. Obviously, we then heard that the cops had been responsible for shooting victims, worshippers there. The idea was that a Islam radical had been attempting to break in Manchester. And I mean, Warren, take it away. Tell us what you think about what was going on and what was said. Reports of a car driven to people outside a synagogue. Driver then attacks others with knife. Stopped from entering synagogue by those inside. Man shot by police who tell bystanders he has a bomb. Turned out he didn't have. What are your thoughts about it all?
Oh, well, my first thought was how terrible the police were. Many people were praising them, but it was absolutely awful. When you've ever done anything along those lines, and of course, we've sort of done those things for many, many years in many different countries. If you are literally going to take a shot at someone, first of all, if you think he is a bomb threat, you're going to take him out. But the police missed actually ending this gentleman or this terrorist life straight away is quite incredible. Because from that distance, as a trained officer or as a trained marksman, you would put that person down straight away. There is footage that shows at one point they're actually talking to the crowd while moving away from the person they've actually hit. So that was quite incredible. They didn't check their fields of fire. Even when you go on the shooting range, you often see pop-ups showing people behind the person that or the target you're meant to be hitting, and you don't take the shot if there's a problem with possibly hitting somebody behind. So the fact that they managed to kill somebody else is quite incredible. And of course, it shows quite clearly that they were panicking in that situation, Sonia. They were talking to the crowd. At one point, they both took their eyes off the guy while he was still alive and still trying to move and everything else. And they didn't really shoot him dead until a passenger in a van shouted out, "My God, he's got a bomb. He's going to blow the place up."
I heard that.
Yeah, the conduct of the police officers, Sonia, here has to be called into question. It's incredible that the crowd were allowed near. If he had a bomb, everybody in the vicinity would have gone up. If you're going to put your man down, put him down, and if you're going to disable him, make sure. Why they didn't go in then and disable him, I don't know. Right. But if they thought he was a living threat, then you end that life. Therefore, he is no longer a threat.
The suspect, shot dead at the scene, has been named as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent. Apparently, he was previously accused of rape, so he was on the radar to a certain degree. And very sad victims, Adrian Dolby, Melvin Kravitz, and the police then came out and said, basically, hands up, we did it. Or certainly to one of them anyway, and potentially two, because the suspect didn't have a gun, right? Yeah. So the gunshot had to have come from the police. So that in itself, deeply problematic. Obviously, this is Greater Manchester Police. And as a consequence of that, we've seen this massive kind of fallout from it. And I should say over the weekend, a mosque in Sussex was firebombed, and you have not seen the same thing at all. And so what you have as a consequence of this, Warren, and we knew it was coming, was you have knobheads like Brendan O'Neill saying after Manchester, there can be no doubt anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. The conflation of the two is what they've been pushing for, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is. Let's be absolutely clear here. First of all, when you say anti-Semitism, that's against a group of languages, including Arabs, for those who don't know what Semitism is. The other thing as well, you have to remember, Zionism is an ideology.
Right.
Okay. Judaism is a religion. There are two completely different things. And of course, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism whatsoever. Zionism is if you like, an ideology, a cult, or a belief system. But literally Judaism is something completely different. And the state of Israel and Zionism is completely different from Orthodox Jews. And this attack was carried out on Orthodox Jews. It is very, very strange, Sonia, but there are two problems we have with this. Firstly, uncontrolled immigration, and then, of course, people are flooding into the country. Does that put us at risk? Well, it does when you have the likes of Keir Starmer allowing Akrotiri Air Base to be used for British planes to take off and give targeting instructions on refugee camps to the Israelis. Now, when you drop bombs on innocent civilians, Sonia, it is the greatest recruiting tool for terrorists there ever could be.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
It is staggering. For instance, I'll give you a for instance. Say you're walking home and, of course, you're in the UK and somebody drops a bomb on your street, on your house, kills your parents, and 3 or 4 bad people come up to you and they say to all your brothers and sisters, would you like to get the people back who did this to you? Suddenly you have 5 terrorists for every 1 innocent person that you killed. Now, if you're going to don't go down that route, and don't get me wrong, I think it's appalling, but if you are going to go down that route, you secure your borders so nobody can get in and and do these reprisals or anything else. The very idea that Keir Starmer thought that might not be an issue is incredible. They have absolutely failed to keep the people of Great Britain safe.
Yes.
And of course, the government, Sonia, are coming out and saying all sorts of things like Shabana Mahmood, Keir Starmer. They've all been out banging the drum. But at the end of the day, these are the people that are responsible for what's happened.
Indeed, absolutely it is. I couldn't agree more. I have to read this quote from Monkey on X. Most synagogues in the UK receive police protection all year round. You think they wouldn't have had protection today? In Italy, all synagogues have plainclothes police protection, as do the Jewish schools, and school trips are also escorted. And I should say that in London, for example, Jews have what is essentially their own police force, Shomrim, which operate alongside the police. So that's been going on since 2008. So there's been a lot of protection that has been afforded to the Jewish citizens of this country. So there's clearly problems. There's problems with, we know that, kind of unfettered, undocumented immigration. Like you say, the fact that our borders are not being protected. But we also have to be ever so careful, I think, that we are not being led down a certain path in order to be able to do a problem, reaction, solution. And it does seriously, significantly alarm me when I see the absolute outpouring, when I see people like British Zionists like Vanessa Feltz afforded a massive platform on legacy media with her own show now, where she brings on her weeping daughter who's weeping about how she should be advising children about what happened at this synagogue. And I just feel that there is an absolute preference and favoritism that takes place in the UK, and we have to be careful about it, Warren. And we know the infiltration of the Zionist lobby, don't we?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And what you have to remember is that, very simply, you only have to look at some of the things that have gone on. For instance, Shabana Mahmood, who has come out and said we need new draconian laws and everything else. Only a year ago, she was out there protesting for a free Palestine. Suddenly, she's talking about all sorts of new measures for the police to stop anybody protesting. Now, it is possible to be against Zionism and against radical Islamization as well. It is possible to be in the middle here and be very, at the end of the day, if you have an extremists on either side, they don't need to be in your country, regardless of whom they follow. And for me, Sonia, this smacks. We also had Tommy Robinson coming out and saying he was a Zionist, he's a committed Zionist.
Off to Israel. He's off to Israel, isn't he? I mean, we now know. I mean, the fact is,
who knew?
I started the show by actually saying, which was kind of like about people like Tommy Robinson, was the idea that those who shout loudest about being a patriot often turn out to be the traitors. And Tommy Robinson is an Israel first guy. He is. He really reminds me of the kind of AIPAC lot in the US as well. But yes, I agree with you, Warren. You're absolutely right. We have to be careful who we're listening to these days.
We do. I am all for Britain first, and this is not racist in any way, because many other countries, Thailand, Philippines, I mean, you name it, the jobs and the benefits go to the people of that country first, as they should. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have controlled immigration, but we have immigration, and of course, suddenly we never get these names or anything, Sonia, do we? Whereas if you look at Liverpool, the name was out there in seconds, and of course everything was known about this guy. There's no doubt whatsoever that Starmer is completely controlled. He's in between a rock and a hard place, because obviously the Israel lobby and Trevor Chin give him a lot of money, and of course he needs the Muslim votes in the various areas as well. What they are doing, Sonia, is they're completely destroying the Labour Party. I honestly believe when it comes to the next general election, Labour are probably out on their ear for the next 10 to 15 years. Wow. There is no chance they will ever get back in. Look at the people that are there. You've got Wes Streeting, of the who's been to many Bilderberg meetings. He'll probably be the next leader after Starmer. You've got Rachel Reeves. You've got David Lammy. I mean, honestly, are you going to trust any of these, Sonia?
Absolutely not. And all of it is kind of making way, isn't it, for reform? That's the reality, because people have had enough of conservatives and they see reform as some sort of alternative. But to me, reform is just establishment light. It's the same old thing. Richard Tice has been at that wall in Israel, kissing it like everybody else. And they all seem just kind of like, establishment actors to me. I mean, that I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. I don't think I am on this. But what do you think? Do you think reform stand a chance?
Reform, all Nigel Farage has to do is keep absolutely quiet for the next 4 years, and he's a shoo-in. Because the Labour and Conservative have destroyed themselves. I think you're absolutely right. It's controlled opposition, and very, very simply, we've got a problem with that. And of course, everything is now being controlled, because we've got the likes of Oracle with Larry Ellison, who are taking over American TikTok. We've got Palantir, who have just signed a deal with Keir Starmer, and of course they're very, very pro-Israel, or pro-Zionist, or pro-Israel, Zionist in Israel. I see it as pretty much the same thing. And of course, this is going to cause a problem. It's already starting to cause a problem on X, where Jewish lobby is very much going around getting posts taken down, and it's also causing a problem. It's going to cause a problem on TikTok. We've already seen anybody criticizing Israel whatsoever, bang, down comes the curtain. So it is, once again, it's your freedom of speech, Sonia, and everything that the new laws and everything they're putting in. It's incredible.
Yeah, let me read you this from Brian. Dear Sonia, TikTok is now censoring posts that mention AIPAC influence in the US. That's one example. And we saw it happening, didn't we? We saw it coming, and people are like up in arms about what's going on X, because, well, they seem to believe that Elon Musk was some sort of freedom fighter. And, again, all part of the same lobby. And then, of course, we heard about Netanyahu making that admission that some of these posts, these people are getting $7,000 plus, Warren.
Yes, exactly that. I mean, you've got TikTok influencers, and we even posted a video of one of these women going on a boat, which has nothing to do with the flotilla, but of course it made for a good TikTok.
Saw that.
Yeah, but some of these are getting 2 million a year from doing these posts. Yeah, we've even published a list of all the people that have actually that are all these influencers that are getting money from this kind of thing, and it really is a problem, Sonia. Once people have control of your media, they can control the narrative, everything that you're saying, and this is terrible for the likes of you and I, simply because we will tell the truth, whoever it upsets, and of course the problem is they don't want that narrative out there, and of course it is only going to get worse. And of course, what with Gaza and everything that's coming up with this peace deal, which we know is not a peace deal, it's a land grab, and it's going to look fantastic when it's all done. And of course, everybody's sort of saying this is a wonderful thing, but it is a movement of the people of getting rid of the people out of Palestine. The Palestinians are being offered money to leave and never come back, but they have to sign an agreement. And very strangely, we've been taking flights in the UK, Germany, Italy have as well, of Palestinians and Syrians. How odd.
How odd indeed. So Trump apparently says that unless Hamas move a bit faster, they face complete obliteration. He's very much like I think he must have been heavily influenced by war and cowboy movies as a child, because he's very gung-ho, isn't he, a lot of the time. And he's also complained that Netanyahu was so negative after Hamas had partially accepted the peace deal. But this is a land grab, as you say. And so this is just the continuation, isn't it, of the ethnic cleansing?
Yes, absolutely. And this is exactly what it is. It is sort of a route when you see the long columns of people trying to get away from that area. And also they're still bombing those areas, which is quite incredible. And you see these people moving away. And where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go to other countries in Europe. They're already doing flights like that. Now, here's the thing. How easy would it be to radicalize people who have suffered terribly like this when they go to European countries? Right. I mean, this is just incredibly stupid beyond belief.
Is it? But is it stupid? And the reason I say that is because a lot of the time I refuse to believe that it's like stupidity or incompetence when it comes to politicians. There's that old saying, nothing happens by accident. I mean, they think out these things. They have teams of advisors who advise them. So I tend to think whenever it looks like they're being incompetent, they're not at all. They just want us to believe that.
Yes, I mean, it's an incredibly stupid thing to do. The politicians, let's face it, they are bought and paid for and owned by various people, whether that be Big Pharma, whether it be the Israel lobby, whether it be the military industrial complex. I don't think it is a crazy thing that to this day people still believe any politician who comes out with anything whatsoever. Right. And of course, in Mexico, for instance, Scheinbaum, who is the head of the Mexican, she is literally bringing out a law that if you criticize a politician, you can go to jail for 6 years.
Well, that's not that different to Trump, really, in many respects, right? I mean, it's kind of similar. I mean, we are living in a real time of fascism, and the people who claim to be about our freedom of speech seem to be the most fascist that we have. UK is like a fascist country now. If we are being stopped from protesting, and they said it's about the cumulative impact of protesting in the same place, so it's all about going after Palestine, pro-Palestine supporters, right? We know that for sure. And so I just like Mexico, America, the UK, they are all clamping down on our freedom to assemble, our freedom of speech, but they also know that they have to attack the internet. So talk to us a bit more about Mexico.
Yes, well, Mexico is basically, they've turned around and said, if you criticize a politician, they're trying to pass a law through there. You will either get 600 hours of community service is the lowest you can get. 600 hours sounds quite a lot. Or you will get 6 years in prison, depending on, I mean, basically it's an anti-meme law, pretty much the sort of, this is the test case. And of course, there is, just to let you know, there is a parliamentary subcommittee that has been set up to look at the impact of this law when it is introduced. So that would tell you that they're very much looking to do pretty much the same thing here, because of course the politicians get absolutely hammered by the British people when they get it wrong. And we haven't got, should we say, I wouldn't say there's one person in the House of Commons that I would trust. If you trust a politician, I've a bridge to sell you. It is quite incredible, Sonia, and the stuff that you highlight and everything else. The censorship that goes on. I mean, we have censorship on YouTube. We have censorship on almost every platform. And what they've done here is they've gone, here's the internet. Here's this free speech platform that you can have. By the way, we are now going to police it, with their own sort of, if you like, Stasi. And of course, they're called AKA fact checkers, but they're nothing of the sort. And the problem that we then have, Sonia, isn't it, is that then they bring in these laws, and the platforms don't want to lose their cash cow. So the platforms then start censoring people on behalf of the government. And suddenly you find you don't have freedom of speech whatsoever.
Let me bring you in this image. Here's the poster gal who claims to be all about free speech when in fact she's nothing of the sort. Has that image just come in there? Yes, it has. Obviously, it's the Conservative Party conference at the moment. And I'm reminded to bring this in because I just saw a comment by Solomon saying perhaps people will connect the dots and realize the real reason they want us to leave the European Human Rights Convention. Well, of course, Kemi Badenoch is calling for that. And this is a woman who wants free speech, but she only wants free speech in order to be able to insult Muslims. But she will protect her Zionist handlers. Yes, she will. And she's doing that constantly. So she's got her big keynote speech, which will be not keynote, but the conference speech on Wednesday. And she is very keen on us leaving the ECHR and repealing the Human Rights Act. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to remember that she's been on visits to Israel. She's also accepted a lot of money from the military-industrial complex. So, of course, that means we can have forever wars in the Middle East. And, of course, this woman, which I'm sorry, but it was the most terrible hire ever. It did seem like they were just ticking boxes. The fact that Labour are so bad and the Conservatives can't even get ahead of Labour, let alone a massive lead, shows you just exactly where she's taken the Conservatives. People have woken up to the woke, if you like. And, of course, this is, as I say, it's just a diversity hire. She has handlers like, should we say, Starmer do. Have you noticed none of these people have got any personality whatsoever, Sonia? And what they generally tend to do is just follow the main line that they're told by the people. You should not allow any lobbyist anywhere near the Houses of Parliament or the Senate in the US. No lobbyist should be anywhere near any of the seats of power, whether that be our Houses of Parliament, because they then are thoroughly compromised. You shouldn't accept tickets to go to the ballet or to go to Lord's cricket ground at the behest of some big pharma company.
Spot on. Absolutely. They're compromised all the way. Short Order Cook, who's in Australia, said, we have Karen, Julie Inman Grant, unelected online czar. She's banning anyone under 16 on social media unless you sign up for online identification. Look her up. I absolutely will. But that's what's happening, isn't it? It's whipping around. That is the reality. The fact is the internet got out of their control. They thought that, you know, the creation of it, they thought that social media, they would be able to manipulate us, and they do manipulate us. But what they didn't account for was human individuality and how we would also use it ourselves. Because a lot of these people are like automatons themselves. You look at like an Elon Musk, he's robotic. These, you know, a lot of these people are very robotic. And so I think it got out of their control, but it's whipping around. We know it. It's happening all over. I doubt Kemi Badenoch will be in her position for much longer. I think she's an absolute idiot. But then I think that about most of these political leaders anyway. So it's nothing, you know, towards her being any of, although she did make a big thing, by the way, about how that she says she's a woman, she's a conservative, identity politics is a trap, she's black. She says, I am more than black, female, and even conservative. I am British. Actually, I'd go so far as to say you're a sellout. And just leave it at that, really. But they're coming after us full force, aren't they? That is the reality. Let me have a look at some of the other stuff that you sent me. Very interesting stuff. What is this image? The so-called passenger train that Russia blew up. Note, secondary explosion. I wonder if I can bring in an image of that, Warren.
Oh, yes. This is basically, there's been a lot of false flags. We've seen a lot about the drones. There's been 11 arrests of 6 different people in 6 different countries. And, of course, we've got this passenger train that Ursula von der Leyen and Zelensky came out and said was hit. Now, in the sanitizer, this is an actual video taken from the drone, and there is a strike on what is the freight train. And, of course, there's a secondary explosion because they were carrying various things in that carriage. Now, when you see the video they've actually put out, there is actually no freight carriages whatsoever. The freight carriages have disappeared. There are no ambulances. There are no aid workers or anything running around. and everything that was in that carriage, of course, has been taken away. And of course, it had a cage around it and gun ports on it as well. Now, if that's a passenger train, I'm sorry, Sonia, and you've got gun ports on it, I have to wonder what you're concealing. And of course, everybody's turning around. They tried to, should we say, do the same thing as they did with von der Leyen's plane when they said it had been interfered with by the Russians. So it turned out this passenger train was nothing of the sort. It was a military cargo transport plane, and it was transferring not only microchips but also artillery pieces as well. And of course, the Russians saw it, blow it up, and of course they didn't. How can I put this? They didn't count on the Russians actually taking a video of them blowing it up. So, of course, their narrative has gone straight down the toilet. The same with the missiles as well.
Warren, you're constantly busy. You're on. I ask you this often. Is it 5 or 7 nights a week that you do your show?
We do 6 nights a week. Monday to Sunday through till Friday. We only have Saturdays off.
Wow. Wow. You are busy. So what is on your table this week, young man?
On our table this week is we are looking at the Tomahawks and also what's going to go on because the Americans, we have it on very good authority that the Ukrainians are not getting Tomahawks. They never were. And we're also looking at the Gerald R. Ford, which has sailed through the Mediterranean, is on the way to the Middle East. And we're also looking at Venezuela, where they're literally gearing up for striking various countries, should we say various places in Venezuela. Now, the interesting thing here is, of course, Maduro gets on very well with Putin. And you have to remember that the 10 times as much drugs is smuggled from Ecuador into America, and yet they don't seem to be bombing that at all.
Interesting, isn't it? Amy said, if Warren had to vote for a party, who would he vote for? Ooh.
Okay, let me be really, really straight here. I think you should get together in groups of 100. I think you should get together, find an independent man. Imagine this, Sonia.
Or woman. If we remove women from the earth, Warren.
Or woman. And what they do is they come and imagine a politician who comes and knocks on your door, Sonia, and turns around and says, please vote for me. If I'm elected, what would you like me to do for you? When was the last time a politician did that? They come and knock on your door and they say, when I'm elected, I will do this. I want you to act on my behalf. So get an independent for every area you can, support him like crazy, go around, knock on all the doors, have a weekly talk where you actually speak to the people where they can log on online, get yourself an independent candidate who's going to carry out what you ask him to do, because no matter who you vote for, he's going to toe the party line, regardless of his individual thoughts. So you might as well have your own guy in there. So my short answer to that is, Sonia, get yourself an independent that you trust and you know, a person who lives in the community.
Mel says, start small, get on parish councils, know your community. Nikki says, close the borders and remigration would get my vote. Randy said, don't vote. What about Advance? Andrew says, what about Advance? What do you think about Advance? That's Ben Habib's party, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those, but he shared a stage once again, hasn't he, with Tommy Robinson, and you have to look at all the people that have done that. Your Andrew Bridgens, your Carl Benjamins and everything else. Always follow the money, because that will lead you to who is running who, and always look at the timing. So follow the money, look at the timing. That will take you closer to the truth every single time.
Hallelujah, brother. Lovely to have you with us today, everybody. This is Warren Thornton from warrenthornton.com. I will, as always, put the link in the description at the end of the show. Lovely to have you with us. Take good care of yourself. Brilliant, clear line today. No typhoons going on there, obviously. Lovely to see you. Wonderful to see you. Take good care of yourself, Warren. Always a pleasure. Warren Thornton, everybody. Brilliant. Cheers, Warren, says Marcuson. Yes, indeed. Brilliant man. Brilliant man. Thanks, Warren, says Merv. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Right. And some of the things that he was saying, very interesting. Loads of things that he was saying was very interesting, of course. But I think that we have to be very, very careful about false flags. Right. I thought about this a lot because there are a lot of things that are happening around us, obviously, that have all the kind of hallmarks of false flags, a problem, reaction, solution scenario. And while I'm not going to go into it today to do with Charlie Kirk seems absolutely a false flag to me in many respects. That doesn't mean that I don't think he wasn't killed. That doesn't mean that. But false flags generally are about agendas. And I sat down last week and I wrote down the points that, to me, when somebody says to me now, how do you know when you're being manipulated? How do you know when it's a psychological operation? Well, the reality is that if you have to threaten and coerce people to comply, okay, there's something wrong with that. If you need to silence and censor people, there's something wrong with that. If you need to punish people like they're doing with the Shabana Mahmood, for one example, if you need to punish people for protesting, then that is questionable. If you only permit specific views about an event on legacy media and all other views are denied, then I would suggest you are in the middle of a psychological operation. Real events do not need to buy compliance. They don't. Look what happened with C19. Absolutely a psychological operation from beginning to end. And you have filth like Michelle Monet, the former Lord. Look at her. She made off with all of that money to do with PPE, and now the government are trying to sue her and all this kind of nonsense. But the truth is, she wasn't the only one who was making good. C19 was a transference of wealth, and it was a psychological operation to push forth all manner of things, including a digital system, including mRNA vaccinations. So false flags, I think they're quite easy to detect these days. I think we live in a world that has become transparently so. And I just wanted to refer back to Tommy Robinson, who's obviously absolutely Israel man. He has been forever. I'm not sure why people think that is news, although my viewers wouldn't think that's news. But one of the things that he said, he gave an interview to, let me just find this. He gave an interview on Saturday night to the Jerusalem Post. He said, I'm not afraid to speak up for Israel. He said, I see Israel as an ally in every value, and I'm coming to show my support because I see too many people afraid to speak up on behalf of Israel. And he went on to say, I've never had any financial benefit from Israel. And he said he's not going to be paid for the trip. But come on, Tommy. You've been paid by Zionists. You've been paid by the Israeli lobby, which kind of amounts to the same thing, kid. You might be able to fool some of your followers in the same way you've got them believing that you're out there marching as a patriot, okay? But you don't fool people like me. You don't fool people like me. You have long been receiving money and support from known Zionists, including Robert Shillman, okay? Funded Rebel Media, which you worked for and was believed to be receiving $5,000 a month. Please feel free to contact me if I'm wrong here. Okay. There was the David Horowitz Freedom Center, a Californian-based think tank, which received funding from pro-Israel donors, has published articles defending Tommy Robinson and supporting him. There's a whole roster of people. So Tommy Robinson can quite legitimately say, I've never received money from Israel. No, mate. Just from their lobbyists, just from their supporters, just from their Zionists. So I think that is really important to be very clear about who he is, what he stands for when he marches through our capital city. Because the aim, obviously, on behalf of Zionists is to absolutely demonize the British Muslims. 100%. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not religious. Okay. I do not support any form of religion. And I certainly don't support any religion or culture that comes to the UK and seeks to change it. There is a culture here, and some of it is multicultural, but that doesn't mean that you come in and you overwhelm people with your ideas. And when I was seeing, for example, there was this Sharia marriage that took place with a 15-year-old girl and her social worker in attendance. We can't have that. We cannot have that. We cannot have that any more than people claiming to be patriots being supported by Zionists. We can't have any of that. We need to highlight and show the traitors in our midst. Bottom line, Right. I want to just say thank you to Sophie and others. Let me just move on from that. Hopefully there will be some change. Changes are coming at Hampstead Pond, where trans-identified males have been allowed to swim in the women's only pond. There's 3 ponds there, right? There's a mixed pond, there's a male pond, there's a female pond. But these trans-identified males, of course, want to swim in with the women, right? Because they want to be accepted as women when they're not, okay? The City of London Corporation, which manages the ponds, has now launched a review setting out 6 possible approaches to gender inclusivity. One option would be to stop trans-identified people from using ponds that match their gender identity and restricting them instead to the Heath's mixed pool. Why can't you go in the mixed pool? Because it's not about that, right? It's not about that. My next guest, I'm going to be talking to him about this and the backlash that he has suffered as a consequence of speaking out about transgenderism. And I've been up to the Hampstead Pond with protesters before, and there's been a number of high profile protests taking place. So yeah, the idea is they're going to have this consultation, and it's actually it's so wrong what is taking place that women essentially are having to fight for rights that we long fought for. We long fought for, you know, the importance of single sex spaces, the importance of sex being determined biologically, and that same thing, and that was recently the subject of the Supreme Court ruling from Sex Matters group, the Scottish group Sex Matters, and they had that Supreme Court ruling which defined the legal meaning of woman as biological sex. When somebody goes to a single sex space, they want it to be single sex. They don't want it to be, you know, a group of women and a man LARPing as a woman. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to get those men out of those pools. Toot sweet. Absolutely. They have no right to be there. I'm sorry. It's outrageous. It's wrong. And it's outrageous. And I hope that consultation bears some fruit. But I think it's the mayor of the City of London, forgotten his name now, but both he and his partner call themselves non-binary. So he completely has a dog in the race, for starters. And I remember him blocking me on Twitter, as it was then known, about 4 years ago. And people who don't know, the City of London is like a separate entity. It's like a city in its own right and very Freemasonic. And this was a man who believed that women should be in men's spaces, except in his Freemasonry spaces. Oh, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Right. What else do I want to talk about? I want to talk about, well, I'm waiting for my next guest to arrive. I want to talk about cousin marriages. Cousin marriages, not okay. Not okay at all. UK Labour government is opposing a first cousin marriage ban, despite the very significant health risks. And so a lot of this all kicked off last week, because what had happened is the NHS, which stands for National Health Service, released this blog which had guidance about the benefits of first cousin marriage. NHS England eventually was forced to remove this blog, which examined the subject of first cousin marriage after this huge public backlash, quite rightly. The blog was published at the end of September by NHS England's Genomics Education Programme. It said that marriage between first cousins had various potential benefits. It did acknowledge that children of first cousins had an increased chance of being born with a genetic condition. But you know what? Who cares about that when the benefits include keeping wealth in the family? Who cares about that? Anyway, as I say, the blog has now been removed after NHS England came after fierce criticism, rightly so, and including from the MP who has proposed changing UK law to outlaw marriage between first cousins. The reality is first cousin marriages are completely unacceptable. That is captured. That is captured, okay? NHS service is supposed to be about our public health. First cousin marriages increase the chance of a child inheriting a recessive genetic condition such as cystic fibrosis or sickle cell disease. It raises the risk from approximately 3% to 6% compared to unrelated couples. And some of the benefits that they talk about is it's cultural, it's to preserve family wealth and keep families together. But none of that matters. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter when it comes to health. And certainly our National Health Service should not be pushing it. It's actually outrageous. And what they are attempting to do is change attitudes so that we become more accepting and embracing of first cousin marriages. Now, Friday's show was about the royal family. The royal family, as I said, are the original cousin marriages family. Well, they're no role models for anything, least of all this. There are other concerns that people should bear in mind as well about first cousin marriages. Is there is a high risk, in some cases, certainly, of forced marriages taking place, particularly within certain communities. And it is also for many seen as a means of immigration control. We cannot accept first cousin marriages on the basis of it is part of a culture, or it is a part of a way of keeping families together, or it is a way to keep wealth in the family. There can be only one priority when it comes to UK and first cousin marriages, and that is the health of the children involved. And that isn't good. It is not okay. It is not acceptable. And so there's lots of ongoing debates about this. And you have people who jump on the back of it just because they're bigots. But I'm not a bigot. And I'm just saying straight off the bat, it's wrong and we should not allow it. And by the way, it is an unreported data issue, which is very serious. In the UK, councils do not track the number of first cousin marriages. So it makes it extremely difficult for us to assess how dire this issue really is. So it's outrageous the NHS supported it. It is right and proper that after a backlash, they were forced to remove that blog, but it should never have been written in the first place. And what it does is it gives us an insight into how captured by the Islam lobby the NHS is. Clearly, see, I have no biases around here. I will call out Zionism, Islam, you name it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Simple. Bottom line. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And first cousin marriages is wrong and is as anti-British as you can get, frankly, except if you're part of the royal family. But then we all know that they're not British. Right. I want to bring in my next guest. How are you all in the comments? How are you? Couples need, what's this, Gabriel? In Arab Gulf countries, couples need to have a blood test, and if they are genetically high risk, they cannot marry. It used to be more common in all cultures years ago, but not necessary today. Stella says, I bet there are 8-year-old brides in the UK already. Oh, and perhaps they will call it the new normal. Only joking. TYJ, who's wrong? Who's wrong, TYJ? Wrong to say that first cousin marriages are existing in the UK? Wrong to say that there was a Sharia law marriage between a 15-year-old and a social worker watch? Well, tell me what point I'm wrong on. Okay? Tell me what point I'm wrong on. It's not National Health Service anymore, cheeky sprite. Well, that might be the thing that I'm wrong on. That's right. Only pretending to be, right? And 100% there are child brides in the UK, says call sign Essex. Thank you, Merv. Merv said, good show so far. So a bit of a feisty show so far. And if you think that's going to change now, you've got another thing coming. Right, you got another thing coming. Mel's is telling me to ignore him. I don't even know what he's saying. It's Neighborhood Health Service. Fun Times Forever says 99.99% Muslims agree with you, Sonia. Good, because my aim is not to alienate people, but just to call out wrong practices wherever they are. Thank you, Marcus. I try to be. Right, let's bring in our next guest. Here he is. His name is Nathan King. You might recognize him. He was on Big Brother. How are you, Nathan?
I'm very well, thanks, Sonia. How are you?
You've arrived to a feisty wake-up this morning, Nathan, and you were just the guest to continue this conversation, as you
I just heard the tail end of that there for the last few minutes, and I thought, right, okay, we're ready to go, which is good.
We are good to go, mate. We are so good to go. So, of course, you were in Big Brother. What possessed you? What possessed you to be on Big Brother?
Do you know, if I can be honest with you, I'd never watched it. Right? I'd seen the little clips from it, so I was not a fan of the show. I just got to the point in my life where I'd done a few different things, jobs, a few interesting things, and I thought, do you know what? Why not? What have I got to lose? I thought it'll probably be a reasonably good experience. I'll probably get booted out first because they do love a bit of woke, and I don't really fit into that category. But luckily, that didn't happen, and I had a great 6 weeks, and I loved it. So, yeah.
You did well.
I did. I got to the final. I don't know quite how, but I managed to get myself to the final, and Yeah, it was good. It was. An amazing experience. In all fairness, even with all the stuff that goes along with it, it was.
What I see, I was absolutely like the first few series, I was like completely like, wow, this is incredible. What a psychological experiment. But I wonder if many years down the line, what you have are people who go in there and they know the game that they want to play. Is that what you encountered?
That was the biggest problem for me, is that I went in and I what you see is what you get with me. I can't be anyone else. I'm just like this, and I say what I'm thinking, and that is it. But I found that when I went into the show, that people had clearly done the research, were clearly coming in with a game plan, fully loaded with a game plan. And I struggled with that, because anytime I was having conversations, not with everyone, but with a lot of them, I felt like they weren't talking to me. They weren't engaged with me. They were talking to the million people that were watching at home. And I thought, I struggled with that. Something deep in my core, I just thought, that's not very
quite manipulative,
pleasant.
isn't it, really? Because I think the original idea in itself was a good one. I really do.
Yeah.
So, and when you came out and you looked back at yourself, did they represent you well? Do you feel that you were represented well?
Sometimes, I think the thing is, it's a 24-hour day. They show 40 minutes of that 24-hour day, and people, so of course they cut it. They make it look like I'd done certain things in certain ways, which I hadn't. But I get it. They're there to make a TV show, and I think the thing is, anyone that was ever planning to go on, the best advice I would give is they don't owe you anything. I think a lot of people went in thinking that ITV and Big Brother owed them a career or owed them a really good edit. They don't. They are looking to make a really good TV show, and that's what they do. And I was quite comfortable with that. I came out and I thought, well, that didn't happen like that, and neither did that. But hey ho, let's move on.
So you are you're proudly British and Scottish, as you say, facts, not feelings. And I agree with you on that.
Yes.
Absolutely. You just got into trouble. There was quite a backlash, and I think it followed this. And this is where you are talking about the trans-identified female in I don't do trans women and trans men, by the way. I do trans-identified. But so you were talking about the trans-identified female who is trans in Big Brother, and that person had said, I'm living proof that being transgender is not a choice. And you had written, she's right. It's not a choice. It's a mental illness. This should not be encouraged. And the backlash has been quite intense for you. Were you expecting it?
I wasn't expecting it, no, because I always just post on every day. I post whatever I'm thinking, so I don't look into it too deeply before I post and think, oh, am I going to get backlash for this? Are people going to like this? I just post it. If people don't like it, unfollow me. Don't watch my content. That's what I always say. But I think the backlash, yeah, it has been severe in some quarters, but it depends where you look. I noticed a lot on Twitter that there's a silent majority there, Sonia, I think. There's a silent majority of people that actually agree with these sorts of opinions. And I think the silent majority are slowly but surely becoming louder and louder, which is great, because it needs to happen. There needs to be a change here, because I think, and actually, as well as on that, I was going to say, in terms of primetime TV, pushing that narrative to impressionable young minds is so dangerous, I find. And then just last night, I was scrolling through X, as you do just before I was going to sleep, and then I saw Youngblood. I don't know if you've seen that, on stage, brought a transgender child onto stage, must have been about 8 or 9 years old, and singing the song Changes. And I thought honestly, you need to see it. It was like, I really like Youngblood, but I was appalled. I thought that poor child didn't stand a chance. And it is, I think the thing is that when it's a child of that age, I blame the parents. Rightly or wrongly, I blame the parents.
You're absolutely right too. The parents or carers have to be held responsible, but you are right. There is a silent majority, minority, whatever I actually think is majority. And but before, you couldn't even say what we're saying now on YouTube. And it was interesting. Last night, I was like, let me just do a recce of what's going on YouTube at the moment. And I noted now there's piles of videos, including from Dr. Phil, where they are questioning whether transgenderism is in fact a mental health issue. And we do know that there are serious problems. There is a corroboration between transgenderism and autism. We know that already. The idea, I think I said to you yesterday, I'd actually spent the last 6 years essentially filming everybody kind of like involved in that trans debate. either side.
Mhm.
And because I came into it with once I started to realize the child abuse issues attached to it, like you've
Yes,
just said about Youngblood, I have not seen that video, and that is so disappointing
it
to hear
was.
that, because I like him, and I
Yeah.
think that a lot of the stuff that he's done is really, it's powerful. He talks about mental health issues himself.
Mhm.
So that kind of pressure is horrendous. We see it on YouTube. We see families transing their children. It's voyeuristic. These families are doing it to, I think, to make themselves, be popular, or whatever it is
Yes.
they feel they get from it. But it's kind of obscene, right?
I find it completely obscene, and I just think that it's almost as if that I was imagining the parent in the crowd yesterday with Youngblood, and I think I bet they're pleased, I bet they're delighted, I bet that's exactly what they wanted. This whole scene around the child, and I think, what chance does that child? I feel awful when I see things like that, and that's why I put that post up about Big Brother, about the trans identified that's on it currently, because it's people are normalizing this to young impressionable minds, and I'm thinking, no, don't do that. And obviously the thing is as well, when they're there, the name is Zila, and all Zila has talked about for the last week is about their trans journey. They have spoken about nothing else, and I think, why do these people also, they make it the whole personality? Surely there's more to you than just what
Right.
you're going to identify as, and that's a bit that troubles me as well. Like, I don't go around constantly telling everyone that I'm a man. There's more to my personality than me being a man, and I think
Right.
it's
It is.
curious.
It's all those cultural identity politics, isn't it? Stephen, no, not Sydney Youngblood. No, not at all. Sydney Youngblood is a great musician from back in the days. No, this is Youngblood, young artist from Camden, I think, kind of got quite close to Ozzy Osbourne in the final days. That bloke, that's Youngblood, different guy, but very influential on young people, because a lot of the stuff that he talks about is really relatable to them, kind of dossing around during the day and all that sort of stuff, and people can relate to him. But you're right, that whole idea of making it the whole of who they are is just, I have no time for it now. Yesterday, I had a conversation about this whole issue of non-binary. Well, I don't recognize non-binary. I just know. Don't get me wrong, right? I was and remain still a lesbian, gay, bisexual ally, absolutely. And I wouldn't, if there's a trans person and there were people who wanted to hurt that person, I would stand in the way and I'd do everything I could to protect that person, because I don't want anybody who feels vulnerable to be harmed just because of who they are. But Nathan, I grew up in an era through the 80s where men dressed up like women on a constant basis and nobody gave a damn. The whole new romantic era was very much about men getting much more in touch with kind of like the feminine side of their expressions. Nobody cared. The only time we started to care was when men were demanding we call them women and give them access to female spaces, and children were being given puberty blockers and having healthy bodily parts removed. That's when people really started to care. When did you start to care?
I've been into politics and everything since I was about 14 years old. I've always been engaged in politics. And I started to see these in Scotland. It became a big thing with Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola Sturgeon and a gang of the SNP, who I'm not a fan of anyway, as I'm me being a unionist. But she tried to bring in that law that was challenged by 4 Women Scotland and J.K. Rowling. It was Scotland that it happened in. And it just didn't sit right with me. I thought, no way could I send away on the Friday, get a piece of paper, sign it, and by the Monday I could walk into a women's changing room quite happily, and I could say, oh well, look, I've got this. And I thought, no, there's something wrong here. If I had a daughter and she were to walk into a changing room and a big burly bloke, like, let's be honest, a big burly bloke who just signed a bit of paper on the weekday past, no, that's not on. That's not on at all.
And we're being lied to what it's about as well, because one of the things that I discovered through my research, and I spoke to the original man who'd come up with this, is a lot of these men have what's known as autogynephilia. And that is where they are essentially turned on by the idea of being thought of as a woman. And so when people say, well, rather than, because women and girls are vulnerable to men, a lot of men, we have to be careful, right? This is a reality. So we know that sex attacks take place in mixed changing rooms, right? So we know a lot of sex attacks take place there. And so somebody had said to me yesterday, well, what about a third way? If you have a male, female, and a third loo? And I said, these men do not want the third way. Exactly. They want to be in with the women. Go on, Nathan.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the thing. If it was as easy as that. And that's the thing as well. on that. They want. I have no problem, right? If someone wants to call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, go on, you do it, and you're at the privacy of your own home. But I don't have to respect that. I can respect my own reality, which is that I don't take that as real. So, and that's the trouble as well that I have, and it's almost narcissistic in the sense that everyone must accept their reality. No, we don't want. Oh well, would we be happy with our own space? No. We want your space. Right. Well, no. Simply, I think that's the issue in a nutshell for me. That I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah.
The protection of children, I think, for me, is absolutely uppermost. And a lot of these people I don't want around children. They're sexualizing them. They're telling them that. See, the approach is absolutely sick, right? You don't say to somebody with anorexia, "You're absolutely right. You should be skinny," right? Yeah. We don't do that. But somehow we tell people who think that they've been born in the wrong body, "You're absolutely right. And we are now going to change you as much as we humanly can over to the other gender," which is just not possible. I also grew up in an era, by the way, where I know quite a lot. I know a few transsexuals. Now, these are men who had great difficulty with what they were given at birth, right? But not one of the transsexuals that I know thinks that they are a woman. And that's the difference between a lot of the transsexuals and the transgender law. And it's a top-down process. When you see that Biden's health secretary was a man claiming to be a woman, who would put a man claiming to be a woman in charge of health, Nathan? Would you trust a doctor who doesn't know what his own true gender is to be able to advise you?
I wouldn't. I genuinely wouldn't. And I think that's the whole thing. And Charlie Cook, I really like Charlie Cook, and he spoke about it a lot in terms of diversity. And would you trust someone that was put in that? Are they in that role because they are fully qualified for that role and absolutely all singing, all dancing, or are they ticking a quota box? And I would, and I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing there, but I would wonder. And as well as that, if they didn't know. Oh, honestly, if they didn't know that, I wouldn't want them giving any sort of advice to any daughter of mine or any. It's the same with teaching. It's the same with teacher roles. I would very much worry if I had to send my kids. In fact, in general at the moment, because we have such liberal, leftists throughout the education system that needs rooted out.
It's deliberate. It's all deliberate. They're all promoting this queer theory to children in schools. They have highly sexualized games involving dices and various other things. And a lot of people have fought against it. Scotland was one of the worst as well, by the way. What's her name? One of the youngest MP. What was her name?
Mary Black.
So she took a drag queen into a primary school, and the drag queen's name was Flowjob. Right. I mean, we all know what that stands for, right? And it's highly sexualized. Children don't need to be subject to that. Miss with a Hiss says it was treated as a mental illness for decades. Then to use it for transhumanism programming, it was reconceptualized. And there is some great truth in that, actually, because they removed it as being a mental health issue from the diagnostics and statistics manual. And because they wanted it's an ideology, they wanted to create it into an ideology so people would buy into it. I could never support anybody who supports it. And again, I'm not at all bigoted, not at all. I do believe in live and let live, just as long as you don't want me to lie about the evidence of my own eyes. I'm not prepared to do that. So I agree with you. We have to be careful in health. We have to be careful with education. These things are really troubling. But you're an outspoken man, and I love that. And I think that should be encouraged, whether we agree with someone or not. And I think that the attack on our free speech is one of the things that is most alarming and troubling to me. How do you find the free speech issue in the UK at the moment, Nathan?
Sonia, I'll be entirely honest. I think free speech only applies in terms of the left when you agree with them. That's how they look at it. If you agree with the left, and I know I'm really over generalizing there in terms of the left, but it's an extreme leftist problem that unless you agree with them on every single issue, the dozens of issues that they have, then you're out, you're cast aside. And they are quite vicious. They are very vicious. I have had death threats. If I just scroll through my DMs, it's just vile messages. And listen, it doesn't trouble me at all. I have got how would I put it? I've got skin like a rhino, right? So you can say anything to me and I do not care. But when I look at it in reality, and when you look at things like Charlie Kirk, I mentioned earlier there, what happened to him? When you get death threats now, it does make you, like, I just usually scoff and say, oh, whatever.
Right,
But it does make me sit up slightly and think, do you know what? All it takes is one person who will follow through, and it wouldn't be it. So it is worrying, and they are a dangerous bunch at times, and I think one look at my messages would prove that. I think the thing is, there is no nuance. They do not allow for conversations. They do not allow for debate. They just shout you down and call you a racist, call you a fascist, call you a bigot. No, let's actually have a conversation, and let's see if I really am those things, or if you're just saying it to shut the conversation down.
And what are these people, whoever they are, excuse me, when they call people whatever, racist or bigot or whatever, what they do is they actually diminish the importance of these things in real life, right? There are real bigots in real life. There are real fascists in real life. There are real racists. There are real far right. But if you want to deem everybody as that, then you immediately diminish when it's really happening in real life. And I kind of think in part that might be part of the agenda to make us all so fatigued by being called every name. I've been called every name under the sun, right? And I've spent all my life, certainly all my working life, fighting against injustices. But the moment that I said it's not acceptable to trans children, people were like, you bigot, you absolute homophobe. And it's like, I was marching for Stonewall. Are you stupid? And that's the thing. I just think that we are demeaning the importance of these words. So you're able to deal with it, but you are right. All it takes is one lunatic, right?
Yeah.
All it takes.
Yeah. I know.
And you're in the public domain now. You are speaking out about all manner of things, including trans, including immigration. So you are a target.
That's fair. That's fair to say. Yeah. And I think it emboldens me, if I'm honest. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but it does, because I think that when they're trying to shut people down completely, and whether terminally or not, or in terms of platform, in terms of cancelling, I think, right, well, I must be doing something right. We must be doing something right if people are trying to shut people like us down. And it does really embolden me to say, no, speak louder. And I think more people need to speak up, because look at what's happened in Manchester last week. I have always been a big advocate for the Jewish community, for Israel, and I know it's polarizing at the moment with Israel, but people need to speak up. There are more people there who support who support the Jewish community in this country, and they need to speak up, because I think the time is almost passing for just being the silent majority, because bad things are happening, and we need to put our arms around the people in this country that need it. I think is fair.
And we also must not be misled as well. I did an investigation into the influence of the Israel lobby and how much they have compromised British politicians. And so some laws that are being made are not for the people in this country, but they are actually being carried out on behalf of Israel. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I am. I think the thing with that is, though, that you've got to fight back against the other side as well, because when we're looking at what's happening with Israel, you've got Hamas propaganda, for example, and I know that's slightly different, but you've got to fight fire with fire on that one, because they are, in terms of the propaganda war, Hamas for a while are winning it. They have got the leftists on side, and I think you've got to fight back with that, would be my point on that one as well.
And it's very interesting, because you and I are actually quite opposite on this, but we're still managed to have a conversation without any of us wanting to beat each other up or threaten each other or any of that nonsense. We need to be able to start talking. Tomorrow, of course, is the anniversary, October the 7th. But do you acknowledge, even with you lining the way you do you acknowledge that this is a very long-term issue and it didn't just start on October the 7th?
It's a very long-term issue, but I in terms of starting on October the 7th, how I look at it is, and this is how I've always kind of explained it, is I'm in Scotland. And there's a lot of Scottish nationalists who want independence. If Scotland, a group of Scots were to invade England, go over the border, kill, rape, torture 1,200 people, and England didn't do everything in their power to eliminate everyone responsible, then I would say the English would be rather annoyed, let's say. So, and then as well as that, if Keir Starmer was to say, do you know what, right, after you've done that, Scotland, well, you've got your independence, well done, there's a pat in the back. I just don't think if I was English, I'd be particularly happy with that. And that is what's happened. That is how I view it. That's what's happened here.
So do you support that settler mentality where people from all over the world who have no association with Israel can go and take land that actually belongs to Palestinians? Because I definitely don't support that. I think that's the problem.
I think there's definitely nuance there, and I don't support everything, and that's the thing. I think that
interesting.
It has become so there's no nuance allowed. It's either you support Israel fully or you don't, and I think that's not right. That won't be the case in Israel. Like Benjamin Netanyahu, every Israeli won't support every decision he makes because that would be ridiculous.
Right.
So I think that. But we're just not allowed to have these conversations, which is interesting that we are having it now because...
Isn't it good? It feels refreshing because
it does.
I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, and yet somehow we're still managing to have a decent conversation, and we don't get that. We don't get that either in life, and you're absolutely right, we don't allow for nuance either. We automatically assume that everything must be either demonic and dark or angelic and light. So you're absolutely right, and that's how they divide us up on a constant basis. We need to unite more, don't we? We need to unite as people, I think, actually against the more kind of parasitical elites who are manipulating us and dividing us. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for that because divide and conquer. But I think it's such a difficult one. It is such a difficult one, and even when you bring it back to tax, like for example, Zach Polanski always saying, "Oh, right, let's tax the rich." Well, the rich would just go elsewhere. Then they'll take their business elsewhere. So it's not as simple as that. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for. Britain does need to. I have never felt so divided as a country. I don't know if you feel the same, but we are, and it's the lack of trust that's suddenly happened as well. I think that, like I talked to my grandparents, my parents, that no matter what, that their generations would always know that the police were on their side, that the government was on their side to an extent. I feel the contract with the public has been completely broken, trust-wise. That we don't trust that the police is on our side to do the right thing. We're frightened that we might get locked up for something I might post on social media. Yeah. And then the government, well, where do you go there?
I mean, I agree with you, and I just think we need to have more of these conversations where people feel that they can air whatever they think, even if it's not like publicly acceptable. Because I do genuinely believe in free speech. Yeah. I'm not one of those half steppers who are like free speech for me, but not for thee kind of people, right? You know, and we see all of those, and that is also on the right as well. Kemi Badenoch is a perfect example of that. She sets herself up as a free speech absolutist, but she wants to stop people from protesting. She wants to take us out of the European Human Rights Convention, do all of these things that actually won't necessarily protect us at all. So I do believe in free speech. Obviously, I don't think free speech should come without consequences. We have to accept that as well. If I say something really horrible to somebody, I have to accept the fact they might not like it and they may retaliate in some way towards me. But I think we obviously need to dial down some of the rhetoric because we are being pitched against each other. And the problem about that level of high emotion is we can't see the wood for the trees. I mean, I keep away from social media for the most part now, Nathan, especially X. It's so divisive. Like everything is black and white. People, or somebody sent me a message the other day saying I had to unfollow you, but I can't even remember what it was I'd said. And I'm like, first of all, I don't care. Don't bother announcing it, announce and flounce, just sod off. But secondly, I mean, it takes a lot for me to unfollow somebody. It's kind of like repeat awful behavior that I just don't really want on my timeline, but I'm not just going to unfollow somebody straight off the bat just for one opinion. And that's where we're up to, isn't it?
And it's ridiculous because like I get that all the time as well. I get messages saying, "Oh, I'm going to have to unfollow you because I really disagree with you on that one." And I'm like, well, okay, so clearly the only people you follow, they agree with you on everything. They just have one little echo chamber where they agree on every single issue. Well, that's just madness and ridiculous and not possible. Like I have friends of course we don't agree on every single issue. That would just be impossible. And yeah, but I think that's also the bit that frustrates me slightly, is almost the entitled nature. I'm going to tell this person I'm so important and I'm so entitled that I'm going to tell them I'm unfollowing them. And I think, like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Off you go. I don't mind.
I'm just reading some of these comments. Let me see if there are two sexes, some of them more sexy than others, says Randy. That's a typical Randy comment. If you knew Randy, our viewer, you would know that's a typical Randy comment. God love him. God love him. Billionaire flesh. I have no idea what some of these comments refer to. They sound a little bit spicy.
Right, okay.
It's lovely to have you with us, Nathan. Thank you, Nick, for hooking us up with Nathan. It is really refreshing to speak to somebody who's prepared to unashamedly speak their mind. So what is on your agenda moving forward, Nathan?
I am I love politics, and I'm involved. I was just at the weekend past there. I was with the Young Conservatives, and I know we are like hen's teeth at the moment, but there was about 50 or 60. We were oversubscribed actually. That came along to CCHQ. I was talking about my experience with social media. We also had Connie Shaw there as well. I don't know if you know Connie. Connie was there, and we had a great time with them. And it was amazing to see how many young people are still engaged in politics and also still engaged in conservatism. I thought that was lovely. So yeah, I think continue on that front. Continue on things that I'm passionate about, and yeah, let's see where it goes.
Indeed. And let me just, Nathan, I had some nice comments that I was just going to thank you for your time. Nathan says, make Orwell fiction again. Indeed. And I've just discovered, by the way, Nathan, that somebody that I always assumed was a man is actually a woman. Randy, I always thought you were male. So I've now just discovered, are you sure you're not just like pretending to be one? Cheers, Nathan, says Jacqueline. It's been a pleasure having you with us, Nathan. Take good care of yourself. I wish you much joy in the future. Nathan King, everybody. Take good care of yourself.
Having me.
Lovely to have you.
Thank
Great.
you, Sonia. Cheers. Take care.
Bye. And who was it who said you got more patience than me, Sonia? I mean, I want to hear other people's views, right? I don't just want to hear my own. And I think that's important as well, because Warren is obviously on the other side of the coin to Nathan as one example, but I give Warren the platform to be able to say his piece. And if I need to say anything in response, I do. And the same with Nathan. But for the most part, I do want to hear what other people have to say on here. That's really the plan. Right. Where are we going to? Did you see, by the way, so last week we had Fiona Rose Diamond on, right? Well, first of all, before I move on, can I just say thank you, first of all, to you kind people in the chat. Thank you for your super stickers. Thank you to Kath. Sending love to you too, Gemma. Thank you so much. And to Paul Trainer and to Swiss Miss. Paul, we've had this conversation before, haven't we? My dad's name was Trainer. Are we related? This is the question. Are we related, Paul? Are you one of my long lost brothers? Right, let's talk about the government ID, the digital ID scheme. So obviously millions of people signed the petition. I think at the last count, there was like 2,700,000 people who signed a petition to scrap digital ID. We had Fiona Rose Diamond on last week. She was talking about the mass non-compliance event that is coming up this month. And so what happens with petitions is once you get past the 100,000 mark, which clearly 2,700,000 is way past the 100,000 mark, then they are eligible for debate in the in Parliament, in the House of Commons, but not this one. Not this one. So the government responded, said that it's committed to making people's everyday lives easier and more secure, and to bring in digital ID as part of Labour's manifesto commitment to modernise the government. But do not despair. So they completely ignored that petition, even though it had huge volumes of signatures. But do not despair, because I actually think there is a big chance that we can head this off at the pass. So first of all, there's a public consultation, which is actually now coming in weeks, and you can have your say. There is plenty of time for pushback. Digital ID is not a given. We have done so well in the UK fighting against so many issues that appear to be a given and are a given around the world. What Nathan was just talking about, what they did in Scotland, for one example, to do with the trans issue, and what we've been doing in England to do with the trans issue around the world, their self-ID is already part of law in parts of the world, including in Ireland, I believe. And that is where somebody says, you know, I can just rock up tomorrow and say I'm a man and then have all my documents changed to claim that I'm a man. But we fought that off in the UK once we had a public consultation and they decided against it. Now, the government will decide against it on a number of grounds. And one of them is if they really can't get the public backing. Not everything. A lot of what is out there on social media is out there to make you feel powerless, like your voice does not count at all, like everything is already written. No, it's not. So there's this public consultation coming. The government will be launching it in a couple of weeks, and they're going to be working alongside trade unions. Well, trade unions already, we know, were absolutely rubbish during C19 as one example. So that's no great shakes, but they are going to be consulting with all manner of other people, including various civil society groups, other stakeholders, employers. So if you want a say, look out for that. I will certainly promote it, a consultation. But what's interesting is the actual country that inspired Keir Starmer supposedly making that announcement was Estonia. And Estonia's digital identity system is an absolute joke. It has been beset with quite significant scamming, security issues. It enables and allows hackers to steal data. It helps scammers to take money. People are not more protected in Estonia, and they know people. You see, Keir Starmer knows that he's got a hill to climb on this one. He knows it. He knows that it's very un-British. The idea of a digital ID, papers, please, that is very un-British, and we will fight against it. So do not despair. The petition clearly was not going to happen, right? But I don't want it to be that people think, well, that went to 2,700,000 and that nothing's been done with that. So there is no point now filling out any kind of public consultation. Don't feel like that. I keep going from hot to cold. God, I think I might be coming down with something, people. I'm now putting my jacket back on again. So don't feel that. Don't feel helpless. I wouldn't necessarily put your faith in groups such as Together, for example. I think all of these are what have they actually done? In the 5 years, right, that all these groups that formed, whether it is, they have their little WhatsApp groups, don't they? As soon as they add me, I get out of it. But they have their little WhatsApp groups. They formed all these groups around C19, a whole load of grifters. They've basically done nothing. They've done nothing except realize there was a gap in the market to take money from middle-class people. And so there's loads of them. There's the farming groups, and these are run by really grifty people. Okay. And so just be careful. And I don't necessarily think that those particular groups are going to help us, but individuals we can, and we can push back on the consultation. And in Estonia, by the way, their fraud has skyrocketed. They are not protected anyway. They lost more than 7 million euros to fraud last year. And UK fraud, we have a problem here. We're already having a problem with the digitals in the UK. Look what happened with M&S and Harrods. They were hacked. These are huge corporations and they were hacked. So we have to be very careful with the digitals, right? Have to be very careful. And Estonia became the most digitalized society in Europe when it introduced its electronic ID cards in 2002. The idea was to save on government administration costs and offer efficient paperless services. Yeah, right. There's loads. And it's interesting. There are so many countries that have rolled out or passed digital ID laws in the last few months, including Switzerland, Costa Rica, Australia, Vietnam, Mexico, Zambia, you name it. So it's all happening. It's all happening. It really is. And it's interesting Warren made that comment about Palantir, because I was hearing through my contacts that Palantir were having problems with the UK's digital ID system and were not prepared to get fully in bed with Keir Starmer. So I want to look into that. Now I want to bring us round to this. Your shout. The amount of people who have contacted me about Jay Slater, the documentary, and about Peter Folding, the diving expert, over this last week has been quite phenomenal. So it gives me a real good insight into who Wake Up viewers are, which is fantastic. I'm not going to do too much on Peter Folding today. I shall go into that in more detail on another show, but I am going to do a review on Channel 4's Jay Slater documentary. So about Peter Folding, that is very interesting. Peter Folding, of course, diving expert, seems to have been across all manner of cases, including one case we looked at the other week of Gavin Williamson, the MI6 agent who was murdered and shut in a holdall in his bath. And somebody wrote to me, by the way, asking about that and saying, Sonia, how is it possible that keys were locked inside the case? Well, what if there was two sets of keys? What if, just to throw people off, there were two sets of keys? One was thrown in the bag on the holdall with him, and one was kept outside to lock it up. That's just a possibility. Anyway, the Peter Folding thing is very, very interesting. So he's come out over the last week, and it's to do with Nicola Bulley. And obviously he'd done this sonar scanning. And what he's actually had confirmed is that the image he found within seconds was a body, and almost certainly Nicola Bulley. And it was just slightly downstream from the bench where Nicola Bulley was said to have gone missing. Nicola Bulley, of course, Lancashire mother, went missing January 2024. Big international and national media campaign about it. And what Peter Folding had to say is really interesting stuff. Does it change the outcome? No. Or does it lend itself to police incompetence? Because obviously they didn't then find her for weeks, even though he claimed to have found her within essentially seconds. And the imagery was quite discomforting, and to see it. It's on the he's interviewed by the guy on Breaking the Ice channel who's done a load of stuff on Nicola Bulley, knows far more about the Nicola Bulley case than I do, without a shadow of a doubt, and hats off to him on that. But you can find it on there. But it is interesting, and I think it also does suggest something of a cover-up. I was never convinced that this was an accidental death, but neither am I convinced that what I'm about to talk about is an accidental death either. And what is interesting is both Nicola Bulley and Jay Slater were both overseen by the same coroner, Dr. James Adeley. So let's talk about it. And let's start off with Rebecca's email. Hi, Sonia. Hope you're keeping well. I was wondering if you had seen the latest documentary on C4 about Jay Slater, and if so, would you mention it on Wake Up? I watched it and thought it was very odd. There seems to be a lot of information in there that wasn't reported at the time. One key part that stood out for me was the family saying how their lives were ruined by armchair detectives, and social media pulling the story apart. At the end of the program, it says they are campaigning to ensure this kind of social media involvement doesn't affect other families in future. I thought it was interesting that this had aired now, says Rebecca. I did as well, Rebecca, and I'll talk about that. And also, good morning to Gossip Girl on X, said, hi, Sonia, hope you're grand. What did you think about the Jay Slater doc? I found it rather interesting. I felt for his family, too young, too tragic. But I do feel like others before them, they're used by the elites to crack down on our free speech, i.e. Jay's law, in my opinion. And thank you to everyone who has written to me about that Channel 4 documentary, including sending me your complaints that you sent to Ofcom. More power to your elbow. So this is my view. I sat down, I watched it, Channel 4 documentary, The Disappearance of Jay Slater. Let's start bringing in some images to this, shall we? Jay Slater, of course, the 19-year-old child, as far as I'm concerned, from Oswald Twistle in Lancashire. His body was found at the bottom of a ravine in Tenerife in July 2024 after a month-long search. He was on holiday with his friends Lucy, Brad, and Brandon, an assortment of others. It was his first holiday abroad without his family. He'd been at a nightclub with friends in the resorts of Playas de las Americas, and then went to an Airbnb in the north of the island with two men he had met. The following morning, 17th of June, 2024, he left the property in the Masca area, called friends, saying his phone was dying and he had no water. A huge search was launched after he was reported missing, and a month later, his body was very sadly found in the ravine. An inquest established that Jay Slater had died instantly from injuries sustained in the fall. And that's all the official narrative thus far. Huge international story, endlessly picked over in the legacy media and on social media. Immediately, a GoFundMe was launched, which, whether you like it or not, Slaters made this a matter of public interest. The moment you put yourself out there in the public domain and are asking for money, and I know it wasn't you launched it, but you were the recipients of it. That is a matter of public interest. Now, it was Lucy who launched that, and it was dear Peter Hyatt, statement analyst, sadly departed, left us in March of this year. But I had Peter look at Lucy Law's GoFundMe, and he found it to be really deceptive throughout. Now, I've been a journalist for decades, and I can tell very quickly when a documentary is not telling a story, but when it is skewed in support of carrying a message, an agenda-led documentary, if you wish. This documentary, in my opinion, is just that. Essentially, this was the disappearance of Jay Slater, how his family want it to be told, which fortunately aligns with the story told at inquest and the conclusion of his cause of death. The Leeds production company, Candor Productions, had extraordinary access to the case from Jay's post-mortem to Jay's inquest, and they set out their stall in the press release for Channel 4. They said, the disappearance of Jay Slater is the family's story and follows them as they search for answers about what happened to Jay, witnessing the conspiracy theories raging online, the subsequent horrific abuse they received as a family, which is an hourly onslaught that continues to this day. These were Candor Productions, were the only cameras in the world that were granted full access. And do you know what comes with being granted full access? Compliance. Doing what the subject want you to do. Oh, yes, indeed. That's how a lot of the politicians are interviewed on legacy media, because they know for the most part, they might be given a few challenging questions, but for the most part, they're on there to promote themselves, and they won't give interviews with anybody who's going to truly challenge them. That's how it works. So this production company already had, to a degree, had their compliance bought for them by so much access. They will deny it, of course. They'll say we went about it in a fully journalistic way and rada. But as I said, this is a documentary with an agenda, probably several, but one of them is absolutely, unquestionably, 100% to target content creators online. And legacy media are more than happy to do that, as people like us are taking their audience. We are showing them for the lies and propaganda that they are. So, of course, production companies and Channel 4, they're all part of legacy media. Of course, they are more than happy to put the boot into content creators, okay? And the executive producer, Anna Hall, she further rams this home in the press release when she says, we have been working with Debbie and Warren and Jay's wider family since last June. What we have witnessed has been utterly horrific, not only the pain of a family in deep grief, but the full onslaught of the online world, the world of TikTokers and YouTubers who feel they can say whatever they like, widely speculating about one family's tragedy. It is appalling what has happened to Jay's family, and we hope this film will help to bring awareness of the real life consequences of online speculation. It is an unmonitored world where fake news runs rife, and this film shows the devastating impact this has had on one grieving family. Now, you would have to have a heart of stone not to be touched by the family, who are clearly devastated. Obviously they are. They've lost the baby. This is Debbie Butler. And this is clearly where she's extremely upset. But the thing is, I am deeply troubled by the overarching agenda of this production. As you can imagine, I am not alone. Many people are upset, and not least some of the content creators they targeted in the broadcast. And as I say, complaints have been sent to Ofcom about it. And I thought it was really interesting. They went fulsomely after these content creators, like proper full on. They were showing imagery. I was waiting for them to to do me, because I'd received a message on my Instagram account, and I never check messages there. Don't send me messages on Instagram. If you want to send any messages to me, send them at soniapoulton@sky.com. But I found a message on Instagram, my Instagram messages, saying, would I like to be part of a documentary to do with Jay Slater? And I don't think it was this one. I think it was one to do with that ITM were planning to do. And it was based on my content. And no doubt they were going to absolutely rubbish me. One of the reasons I think they'd find it difficult to rubbish me is I worked at ITM for 8 years. So that might say something bad about them. And I suspect that's why the big fat elephant in the room was not mentioned. And the big fat elephant in the room who was not mentioned and has done more to spread information on this case than anybody else that I know about is one Mark Williams-Thomas. Okay, Mark Williams-Thomas is an ex-cop. And I'm going to go into some explanation as to why I believe that they didn't mention him. But this is a man who came out and he made a 2-part podcast series. And he claimed to have got close to the Slater family. And they didn't once mention him. Yet the very things that he'd come out with about, for example, Jay had knives down his trousers, which had gone from Lucy to Mark Williams-Thomas, that information that Jay had been involved in stealing a watch, that was all accredited to these loose cannon content creators, but yet nothing to say about Mark Williams-Thomas. Now, is that because Mark Williams-Thomas is a TV cop who supplies work to the legacy media channels? But it could be something else, but we're going to go into that. So what I want to say, first of all, I think that in that regard, in terms of the absence of the big fat elephant in the room, Mark Williams-Thomas, I think as an investigative journalist, there's a story there. But I want to say that what is interesting is I think that what happened to Jay Slater is essentially told within seconds of the documentary. Seconds. And so what you get, it's a reenactment of Lucy reporting Jay's disappearance to the police. She doesn't know why he went up to the mountains to an Airbnb with the 2 men that we later find out to be Rocky and Ahab. She told about her last conversation with Jay, and she had told him to go back to the Airbnb and get a lift, and he said he couldn't. Well, straight off the bat, why was Jay Slater, a man who didn't know the territory, prepared to face a significantly, seriously difficult walk back to his apartment rather than go back and get a lift from friends? So that already was like, is triggering to me. It's like something's kind of off about that. And there's also a series of messages that Debbie had come into Debbie's possession, which I will also talk about, which I think is problematic. And the documentary itself is honestly, like, from a personal level, yeah, it's touching. You see things like Jay as a baby with his mum as one example, and they're singing, and that stuff is touching. And she talked about how this was Jay's first holiday abroad without them, how when the passport arrived, the dog chewed it up. I mean, maybe dogs just know, right? She talked about how Jay liked to keep a tidy room. It's clearly a heartbroken family. They were recalling his childhood. They were talking about how Jay is sociable, loved meeting people, and was too trusting. And the documentary is a family affair. It's Jay's dad, Jay's brother, and obviously Debbie Butler, Jay's mum, who became the sort of beleaguered face of the search. And Debbie said this, so this again, I think is very insightful. Debbie said when they heard Jay was missing, they headed to Tenerife. They got there and she received a message which was threatening her. And the message said, I can't read out all of it, it's got a swear word in, but the message said, I'll give you one warning. Your son won't be coming back. He owes us enough effing money. Kiss goodbye to him. Now, Debbie had received that, and also there was Lucy saying how he was struggling he wasn't going to go back to the Airbnb. So Debbie had received that message, but yet she still supports the idea that Jay fell to his accidental death. I'm not sure that I definitely haven't reached that same conclusion. And were I receiving a message like that when I've arrived onto a holiday island looking for my son, telling me I'll give you one warning, your son won't be coming back because he owes us money, I would see that as a significant threat to his life. but maybe I'm different to Debbie Butler. So anyway, as I said, Lucy had set up the GoFundMe. They talked in the documentary about what people were saying online about the GoFundMe. And how some people believed that the money was to pay off kidnappers. Lucy denied it. And Peter Hyatt was very insightful. What he had to say about it and about Debbie Butler at the time was he didn't believe that Debbie Butler was involved in scamming people. But like me, he believed that Debbie Butler knew who her son was. Now, this was a very glossy depiction of Jay. And as I say, a young lad, and honestly, at 19, you still have plenty of time to change and get onto a good path. But there were issues that were behind him that people online knew about, yet were kind of like dismissed as nothing in this documentary. And that included the attack of one young lad, and Jay was part of the gang involved in that, and had received a conviction for it, but that was really downplayed. He wasn't involved, really nothing to do with him. And the idea was that they were trying to make out that Jay was just, you know, a lad going off on his first holiday without really looking into what he was potentially doing out there in Tenerife and with people who seem to spend an awful lot of time on Tenerife and not holidaying. I think you get my drift. There's no way that the documentary was going to touch any elements of that, right? They did everything they could to avoid anything like that, even down to the point when they were talking about the toxicology report. And there was a woman from the coroner's office on the line to Debbie Butler and saying that there was some MDMA and cocaine traces in Jay's system, but probably not so much that it would be used as a cause of death. And so they would do everything they essentially could to keep it out of the public domain. So the coroner's office was working hand in hand to create a certain narrative with the family, it would appear. And what Debbie was saying was, oh, they're going to take this apart all online. And I genuinely do feel for her. There are some horrible, rotten, stinking people out there who I wish would behave in a better manner online. But we also cannot have manipulated and crafted storylines when you have been involved in asking for public funds, which amassed a huge amount. If I remember, it went well over 50 grand and beyond that. Anyway, the production, as I say, fantastic production. It was brilliant production. I mean, it was really a well thought out production. And as I said, they had managed to get access throughout the story. It was extraordinary access, which is absolutely one way you can tell this is an establishment narrative, because these cameras went where media normally can't. Access to the coroner, James Adeley, who was scathing about other theories. He was like, I'm only interested in what can stand up in a court of law. Of course, as a coroner should be, right? Because that's what evidence is about. And they were also filming while the pathologist, Dr. Richard Shepherd, was doing the autopsy. A lot of it felt really intrusive and inappropriate. But all of this was co-signed by Jay Slater's family, 100%. Then there was the inquest, which was at County Hall in Preston, and there were witness statements from the people there, Rocky, Iab, and Lucy. Jay's dad really believed that the truth lay with Rocky and Iab, yet at the end of the inquest, he was happy to believe that that Jay had died as a consequence of being unprepared for a difficult terrain and an accidental fall. So let me just bring in some of these characters. This is Dr. James Adeley. Again, we talked about him. He was also the coroner for Nicola Bulley. This is Dr. Richard Shepherd, again, another establishment pathologist involved in a multitude of cases. But what he had to say, I thought, was actually quite interesting, because he said, we can deduce, I'm paraphrasing him here, but we can deduce that Jay likely died as a consequence of a fall. What we can't tell is whether he was pushed or not. And I thought that was one of the most honest things that was said in the entire documentary, actually. Because as Jay's dad actually said, how can you rely on a convicted drug dealer who has taken your son into the mountains? And he wanted to ask Rocky and Ahab why. He said he wanted to pump them with truth drugs. Both Rocky and Ahab were seen in a car with Jay apparently on the way to this Airbnb. This is Ayab, who did actually give a witness statement. His voice was revoiced by an actor. That was the only thing that wasn't allowed in the documentary, was what you weren't allowed to hear the original voices at the inquest. And quite rightly, that's not how it works generally for anybody else. So why should it work like that so they had to revoice them. And the inquest even actually did allow filming inside the inquest, but just not the voices. And what they said was witnesses expressed fears, not about the court process itself, but about social media comment that may follow. The doctor said social media made obtaining answers more difficult in this case. So the blame for lack of witnesses around Jay Slater was firmly blamed on social media commentators and content creators, which in itself is extremely problematic, problematic. And the witnesses were Lucy and Ayab, who were on the line, and then there was Brad Giogan, who was in person, a friend of Jay's who had gone out to Tenerife with him. And Ayab said he recalled the drive, said Jay wanted to go with them because they were still up and it was late and they still wanted to kind of party. And he said, one thing I know for sure is Jay did not steal a watch. And the coroner ruled there was no third party involved in Jay's death. He said there was no evidence anywhere of third party involvement, that Jay had been up for almost 24 hours. This is simply a young man who didn't appreciate the circumstances he was getting himself into. One of the devastating revelations came from Debbie, and it was devastating. She revealed that Jay had drafted a social media app message saying he wasn't going to make it shortly before his death, which again, you are seeing all these problematic messages, but you believe it's accidental death. And what I'm talking about here is what happened was when they were able to access Jay's social media, she said, when we signed into Jay's Snapchat, there was an unsent message from Jay to Brad. So the message was obviously just flying around, and then the message sent to Brad because they signed into the account, and then the unsent message was sent. And Brad messaged them straight away, said, are you on Jay's phone? Because obviously Jay's dead, right? So, or I'm not sure if this was the point before he'd been found, but either way, Brad was like, why have I just received this message from Jay? This is really weird. And so he messaged Debbie straight away, said, are you on Jay's phone? I said, yeah, we've just signed into his Snapchat. He said, I've just got a message that's just come through from Jay. And the message that went through was, listen, I'm not going to make it. Now, if you've fallen down a ravine and the fall killed you, you're not going to be able to send a Snapchat. Okay. And Debbie Duncan said that was the last message he sent. It's kind of like he knew he just wasn't going to make it. Yes, I think so. Absolutely it is. And his mum had all these weird clues that it might not be an accident. And yet this documentary was very much driven in that way and concluded that way. Now, she's a grieving mother, and I'm not going to criticize her because it must be very, very painful. But I do take issue with the fact that she is being used now, absolutely used, as Gossip Girl said, as the most useful of idiots. And that is a reality. Because let me just continue with this. There was so much unprecedented and inappropriate footage, which continued at Jay's Accrington funeral. There were cameras in church, all access production. Some of it left me so uncomfortable and feeling as if it was so heavy on emotion, and it felt like emotional manipulation. It was the whole issue of how to identify his body, and all that was weird and uncomfortable because he'd been left in this heat and in this terrain, and it wasn't easy to identify his body. Some people say that was not Jay. And it came down to what he was wearing largely. And but Richard Shepherd said that the head injury was consistent with a fall. And as I say, but he just couldn't rule out whether he was pushed or not. But that didn't go down for the coroner. And they filmed Debbie saying it's been a year on and I still can't bear to unpack his case. And she did that for the cameras, goes through his bag that he was seen with, and which they had received from the Spanish police. And she said she didn't believe the stuff about the watch taken off of a Romanian guy. I know my son, he wasn't capable of it from the videos, and he wasn't a thief. The family were satisfied with the inquest and the cause of death. Both the mum and dad felt that they had the truth, and they said that they can now process it as a tragic accident. But this is where it all turns. And that's fine. If that's what the family can do, then more power to their elbow. But as I said, this is where it turns, because Debbie was like, but I will never understand why social media detectives have been destroying people's lives. The YouTubers and the TikTokers have made this a million times worse. And it was painful to hear that. And I had to question whether I'd contributed to that or not. And I don't believe for a second I have. My job as a journalist, my job is to examine stories, whether a parent likes it or not. And there were many question marks over the disappearance of Jay Slater. But I'm in no doubt whatsoever, to all the people who've written in, that this documentary was about clamping down on content creators, an attempt to silence anyone deemed a conspiracy theorist. And it was a clear attack on online commentators. And yes, as I say, some of them are absolutely problematic. Some of them go far too far. They make statements of fact, which are only opinion, and some do not have the evidence that they claim to have. But what was really concerning was part of the documentary was Debbie Butler having a meeting with her local MP, Sarah Smith. And they were going on about people talking rubbish on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. And Sarah Smith we will make contact with platforms and challenge them. And Debbie wants it to stop. And I can understand why. But Debbie, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you slightly in the category of the McCanns now. And that is, the McCanns did what you're attempting to do now. And that is control the media and the public output about what they think about your case. And that's not okay. It must be absolutely awful what you've gone through. And I do genuinely feel for you. It's your son. But it was made a matter of public interest, and not least because of the tens of thousands of pounds that you took from the public. Debbie wants to be the guardian of this story. And that includes what he said on social media about her son having drugs in his system. She said they were powerless to stop it. And again, honestly, I'm sad for her. And I do wish people were kinder. But I want to bring this back to the role of Mark Williams Thomas. Why the hell was he missing from this documentary when they went after content creators, half of whom I'd never heard before, but I've heard of Mark Williams Thomas? And why was he not involved in this? And why haven't I got a picture of him? I'm sure I have somewhere. But Mark Williams Thomas is a former cop, an absolute busybody who has got himself involved in cases that have absolutely niche zero to do with him. That whether that includes Nicola Bulley, whether that includes Jay Slater, or whomever. I was pretty sure I did take a picture of him, but now I can't find it. Let me just see. Here he is. Here he is. Yeah, I want him so you know who I'm talking about, because I think the real story about the documentary is why they didn't include this man. And I think that is a story there that I intend exploring further beyond today. Because Mark Williams Thomas was the man who so-called exposed the Jimmy Savile rumors, right? So, and he was being fed information from, amongst others, Jay's friend Lucy. Iffy Lucy, am I allowed to say that? It's a matter of opinion, not fact. And he had first-hand accounts from Lucy, from Ahab, the convicted drug dealer who Jay accompanied back to an Airbnb, and who Jay's father said, should I even believe a convicted drug dealer? And Mark Williams Thomas was receiving information from them, which is including about Jay having stolen a watch, about Jay apparently putting knives down his trousers. And then it turned out that apparently none of those things we were told were true, right? And yet Mark Williams Thomas has a much bigger platform than these content creators who were being targeted. So why wasn't Mark Williams Thomas targeted in this documentary? Why? One of the content creators who was targeted was an account called Wax Unfiltered. And I made sure not to watch any of the reviews about the documentary from any of the content creators involved until after I had done my own review. And I watched the Wax Unfiltered one. As I say, he's one of the content creators targeted by the Channel 4 documentary. And he had very similar thoughts to me about where the hell was Mark Williams Thomas. He talked also about how it was Lucy who was feeding Mark Williams Thomas. And he also claimed it was Lucy who took the picture of Jay in the back of the car smiling. And I don't know any of that to be true or not, but I'm just telling you what Wax Unfiltered was saying. But reality is that was a whitewash. That documentary was a whitewash. It's an official narrative, but it's also an official narrative with an agenda. And we have to be extremely, extremely careful about what it is telling us. And so my assessment really is that Debbie Duncan, and I, again, feel very deeply, deeply, yes, it's Debbie Duncan. Why am I calling her Debbie Butler? That's odd. I don't know. But Debbie J's mum absolutely wants new laws because of what happened to her son. That's really what's happened. And she's been given all manner of TV sofas in which to espouse this. She's calling for a change in the law to stop misinformation on social media platforms. We've already had that. Look what they did during C19 when people were spouting pure fact about C19, but it was ruled as misinformation and people were being booted off social media. So I'm sorry, Debbie, for all your pain. And I genuinely feel very, very sorry for you. This is a matter in the public domain, and it is not for you or anybody else to tell other people how they should be thinking. She's, as I say, previously described how online trolls accused her of murdering her son. Yeah, well, that's horrible. It's terrible, but there's laws for that. There's defamation laws. Sue people. If it really bothers you that much, sue people, but don't make it a criminal issue, because the moment you make it a criminal issue, that means that who then decides what is mis and disinformation on social media? Do you trust the people who are drawing up these laws to decide what is fact on social media? I don't. And sorry that I called her Debbie Butler earlier. Her name's Duncan, obviously. So that's what she's doing. So we now know what Debbie is all about, and she's grieving and she's being used for an agenda that is much bigger than her or her son, very, very sadly. Channel 4 was originally sold on quality programming. It has produced some great documentaries in its time. But in amongst those, they have inserted mockumentaries, and this was one of them. The McCanns is also a favourite for them making mockumentaries. They did a reconstruction, which was a mockumentary, and the recent one about Christian Bruckner was also a mockumentary. And essentially what's happening is Jay Slater, the missing Lancashire lad, and a very sad end for him, is now being used to censor social media, and his mum very sadly is the pawn in the game being used to do it. Bad law is made when it's based on the worst of us, and that's what they want to do. They want to take a selection of the worst of us online and make laws around that, and that is not okay. And so that's kind of what I thought about the documentary. It was a clear agenda-led documentary, and I don't support it. And you know that from the sheer access they had, phenomenal access. I mean, true investigation would really appreciate that phenomenal access, but with that phenomenal access comes compliance. Reality. Right, where are we? Joanne. Good morning, Joanne L. And Joanne L sent me some images from Scarborough, and I meant to show them last week because there's this man in Scarborough, right, an artist. He's an artist, Fred Brown, and he spends hours sketching in the sand images on Scarborough Beach. Let me just send in. Let me just show you some of these. These are rather lovely. If I can find them now. Monday Pics, Scarborough. Where is Scarborough? Well, this is one that he's just done, which is fantastic. That is to kind of highlight Keir Starmer's digital ID. These are some others. Brilliant. This is genius. I love this kind of stuff. Right up my street. It's right up my street. Here's some more that he'd done. Thank you, Joanne, for sending them in. Absolutely brilliant. You can see that. I'm pointing at my cursor. You can't see that, can you? But it's brilliant stuff. But what it is that's to do with protesters being hammered by a judge, one of them. And brilliant stuff. Thank you for sending that in, Joanne. Wonderful. This is incredible art. And there's the Glorious 12th is the other one. This is incredible art. I love this. Art with a meaning. And what's not to love, frankly? What's not to love? Thank you so much for your responses to my Abolish the Monarchy video. Really appreciate you. I really appreciate you all. Incredible comments. Always feel free to tell me where you think I've gone wrong, or anything that I've missed out, and I am happy to look at it again. A couple of people wrote to me and said you didn't mention offshore accounts. It's true, that was an oversight, that wasn't deliberate. But the offshore accounts, a lot of them ceased to be seen or exist 2017 to do with the Queen, but that doesn't mean there isn't a story there. So I am acknowledging that, absolutely. But I wasn't so much doing how much money do these people have, whereas what I was more focused on in the finances was how much money are they costing us. But I do take your point. And the other interesting thing was, obviously the week before I'd done the Freemasonry video. I can take that, I don't need them anymore. I'd done the Freemasonry video, and what was so interesting, you may have seen this, I'd done that on the Friday, and on the Monday there was an announcement. And I don't believe this is to do with our video. I just believe that we are kind of like operating on a certain level at the moment. It's almost like at Wake Up, we know what's coming up, and that includes our viewers as well. Our viewers often write to me about something, and then suddenly I'll see, in the newspapers or whatever. Well, this happened with the Freemasonry video. So what happened was, on the Monday, following the Friday, we did the video on the Friday. On the Monday, the Metropolitan Police announced that that Metropolitan Police officers may soon be forced to disclose whether they are Freemasons. What? That's incredible. And that would be incredible, because obviously we know that Freemasons take an oath of loyalty to the fraternity's principles and to supporting their brothers, no matter what. And I highlighted in the Freemason video the deep role of Freemasons. And Marcuson in the chat pointed out to me that Metropolitan Police was formed by a Freemason, which I hadn't mentioned in the report. Thank you very much for that. So it runs deep. But the point is they are now looking to force Metropolitan Police officers to declare any association that may compromise their integrity or damage the reputation of the force. This is up for consultation now. It's going to be very interesting. I want to see if Sadiq Khan is going to block it like he did before, because he blocked it before, and as the Mayor of London, he has a big say about what happens with the Metropolitan Police. But the Met Commander, Simon Messenger, said, we're now consulting on a proposal to add to the list. And the list is who police officers have to say what groups they are part of, and they haven't had to say they're part of Freemasons. And you have to wonder why. So the commander is now consulting on a proposal to add to that list the involvement in Freemasonry. And it says this does not prevent any member of staff joining the Freemasons or another similar organization, but it means we will know who is part of it, and not before time. And it's 11:11, and I take that as a spiritual message, but not before time. Donators, you're the absolute best as always. Catherine M, Margaret R, Alan A, John G, Catherine S, F Young, Linda Y, Merv W, Peter B. I am in the process of designing my own merch, not what other people are designing for me, not what a Dashery or any other company are, my own merch. And I'm looking to create proper comfort mugs that I personally would want to use. A proper mug to hug hopefully for Christmas. I'm also doing candles. I'm sourcing information now so that they can be perfectly safe and not toxic. And also, please remember, we are also on Rumble. And can you please follow me there, just in case, in the unlikely and hopefully unlikely event that anything untoward should happen on YouTube. Right, which brings me to the end of our show, and a quote that I came up with, I didn't come up with, I heard this weekend. I was listening to some Maya Angelou recordings. Obviously, Maya Angelou, brilliant activist, poet, writer, no longer with us, but it's a supermoon in Aries tomorrow, and she was a dear darling Arian. She was brilliantly creative, a typical fiery Aries. And one of the things that she said in this broadcasting was, not everything that rattles deserves your time. And that really resonated with me. The truth is, not everything needs a reaction. And once you know that, this is the height of emotional intelligence. It took me years to realize I didn't need to bark back at whatever was barking at me. Because the ability to pause, observe, and choose a thoughtful response instead of giving an immediate knee-jerk reaction is bloody priceless. Now, you will have triggers like we all do, and the immediate urge to react is often driven by high emotions, by biases or past experiences which have tainted and discolored the way that we see the world. But the secret is to know these triggers, learn about them, learn to manage them, and to respond if you must at all, because not everything deserves a response. But if you must respond, learn to respond with intent. So the thing is, when you pause your reactions, when you learn to do that, and the simplest way to do it is when you receive something that you don't like, just stop. Just stop. Fight the urge to fight immediately back. Just stop, breathe, slow down. Because when you pause your reaction, what you are usually caught in some maelstrom of emotion. So it enables you just to kind of stop on that for a moment. And the thing is, when we react in a moment of anger or frustration or anxiety, it's impulsive, it can be absolutely unhelpful, it can be cruel, it can be unkind, it can be all those things. But if you give yourself a moment to calm down, it can prevent you from saying or doing something you will regret. And even if you're subject to deliberate provocation, the moment that you snap back, you lose power. The power is in your hands if you can withhold reacting to deliberate provocation. By choosing silence, you take away their power and you conserve your energy. And quick reactions often come from having an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of a situation. So do yourself a favor, pause. You know, minor annoyances are often an unnecessary energy drainer. Conserve your energy. You're worth so much more than that. You know, sometimes we can lose sight of how to react when a situation is not in our control. Well, that's exactly the time really that I would advise you to pause. Okay. The way to practice non-reactivity, and it can be a lifelong attempt to do it. Okay. Pause, breathe, just stop. And consciously breathe in and out. Just do that. It doesn't get more simple than that, because what will happen is a few deep breaths can interrupt your automatic emotional response, and it will help you to regain your composure. Reflection is a really powerful tool in your artillery in learning not to respond to everything that comes on at you. Reflect before you respond. Before acting, ask yourself a few questions. What outcome do I want to achieve? If you just want to bomb the bridges and end that relationship, fine, say whatever you want, right? It's up to you. I mean, you might end up feeling shite about it, but if that's what you want. But if you actually want to maintain a relationship, what outcome do you want to achieve? And also, whether you like the person or not, question, is this immediate response really aligned with your true values and who you truly are? Because people are constantly changing. And maybe sometimes it might be a good idea to put yourself in the other person's shoes, as long as they're not a deliberate provocateur. If they are actually somebody who's genuinely trying to make a point to you, it might be a good idea to try and put yourself into the other person's shoes. What are they feeling? What are they needing? And it's another cliche, but practice mindfulness. We live in a world where everything becomes absolutely automatic. Don't allow that to happen to your mind. You need to actively practice mindful awareness. And it can be hard when you're on the hamster wheel of just reacting. But if you do, it can really help you stay grounded and in the present moment. And the other thing that I would say to enable you not necessarily to have to react to every squeaky wheel is park your judgment either way, towards yourself or towards others. It's hard, but true if you can, because it enables you to observe the situation from perhaps standing back a little bit. And I want to end today's show quoting from one of Maya Angelou in one of her brilliant poems, Still I Rise, which I love to this day. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I absolutely love it. And I just thought, Aries super moon, it's going to get quite hot out there tomorrow over the next few days, right? I've already had a weekend of I've seen people kicking off and everything. And we all know what happens around full moons. And that is, there is bigger uptake in A and E, and harsh things can happen around full moon. So take good care of yourself, especially with a fiery Aries full moon. So I want to read from Still I Rise. And this is in memory of Maya Angelou. And I'm just going to read a couple of the statements here. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room, just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high. Still, I rise. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. And I love that. It's much longer poem, and it's wonderful, and it's really about how incredible a human being she was. And yeah, rest in peace, Maya Angelou. Have a beautiful, beautiful full moon. Thank you for watching Wake Up, wherever you're watching Wake Up, whether you're on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, or on Spotify, whether you're watching live or on playback. Thank you to my two guests. Thank you to everybody in the live chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm full of thank you and I'm full of gratitude. You take good care of yourself, peeps. Keep writing to me. Have a magnificent, magnificent week, and I will see you on Friday. Lots of love to you.